The summer heat pressed down on the neighborhood like a heavy blanket, forcing families to retreat into the cool shelter of their homes. Every afternoon around 4 o'clock, the familiar melody of Turkey in the Straw would drift through the bus air, announcing the arrival of Mr. Frosty's ice cream truck. The children of Maple Street, including 12-year-old Emma Parker, would eagerly dash out with whatever coins they had saved, excited to exchange them for a sweet frozen treat. Emma had just moved to the neighborhood with her parents after her father got a new job at the local hospital. She was still adjusting to the unfamiliar surroundings and hadn't made many friends yet, but the daily ritual of the ice cream truck was something she quickly came to anticipate. One particular Tuesday afternoon, Emma noticed something strange about the ice cream truck as it rolled slowly down her street. The familiar jingle sounded slightly off-key, with notes that dragged and warped in an unsettling way. The truck itself looked different too, not the pristine white vehicle with colorful cartoon characters that usually came around. This one was dingy and faded, with peeling paint and windows that seemed too dark to see through properly. Most peculiar of all was the timing, as it was nearly 8 in the evening, long after Mr. Frosty's usual rounds. Emma watched from her bedroom window as the truck crawled past her house at an unusually slow pace. Despite the late hour and the strange appearance, she could see a few neighborhood kids approaching the vehicle, drawn by the promise of ice cream on such a sweltering evening. The next day at the local playground, Emma overheard 2 older boys talking in hushed tones about the ice cream truck from the night before. "Did you see how weird that guy looked?" one of them whispered to the other. "He didn't even have any of the usual ice creams, just these weird homemade popsicles in plastic bags." The other boy nodded vigorously and added that the man had asked him strange questions about where he lived and if his parents were home. Emma felt a chill run down her spine despite the summer heat. She remembered how her mother had always warned her about strangers, especially those who asked personal questions or offered treats. That evening at dinner, she mentioned the unusual ice cream truck to her parents, but they dismissed her concerns, assuming it was just a new vendor trying to establish a route in the neighborhood. Over the next few days, Emma noticed the strange ice cream truck appearing more frequently, always after dark, and always playing that same distorted melody that somehow managed to sound both cheerful and menacing at the same time. She observed from her window how fewer and fewer children approached it each time. On Friday evening, her curiosity finally overcame her apprehension. When she heard the familiar yet distorted jingle coming down her street, she grabbed a few dollars from her allowance jar and headed outside, ignoring the little voice in her head that told her to stay indoors. As the truck slowed to a stop at the end of her driveway, Emma approached cautiously, trying to peer through the serving window that seemed unusually high off the ground. "Hello there, little one," came a voice from inside the truck, raspy and thin like paper being slowly torn. "What can I get for you today?" Emma couldn't see the speaker clearly through the darkened window, just a silhouette that seemed oddly shaped and too still. "What kinds of ice cream do you have?" she asked, standing on her tiptoes to get a better view. There was a long pause before the figure inside moved closer to the window. "Why don't you come around to the back? I've got special treats there." "That aren't on the menu," the voice suggested. Emma's heart began to race as alarm bells went off in her mind. She remembered all the safety rules her parents had taught her and took a step backward. "No, thank you," she said firmly. "I'll just have a popsicle from here." The atmosphere seemed to change instantly. The cheerful, albeit distorted music abruptly stopped, plunging the street into an eerie silence that felt heavy and threatening. "Are you sure about that?" The voice had dropped any pretense of friendliness, now carrying an edge that made Emma's skin crawl. "I insist you come around back. I have something just for you." Emma took another step back, her instincts screaming at her to run. Through the gap in the serving window, she caught a glimpse of the vendor's hand as it reached toward the opening. The skin was unnaturally pale, and the fingers seemed too long, the nails yellowed and sharp. Without hesitation, Emma turned and sprinted back toward her house, not looking back even as she heard the truck's engine rev behind her, safe inside her home. Emma locked the door and ran to the living room window, peering out from behind the curtain. The ice cream truck remained at the end of her driveway for several long minutes, its engine idling ominously. Then, slowly, it began to move down the street, the music starting up again as if nothing unusual had happened. That night, Emma had trouble sleeping, her mind replaying the encounter over and over. The next morning, she was determined to tell her parents everything, to make them understand that this wasn't just her imagination running wild. But before she could, the neighborhood was buzzing with disturbing news. 8-year-old Timmy Wilson from 3 houses down hadn't come home last night after telling his mother he was going to buy ice cream. The police were everywhere, questioning residents and searching the area. Emma's stomach knotted with dread as she overheard officers asking if anyone had seen an ice cream truck in the neighborhood. Without hesitation, she approached one of the officers and told him everything she had observed over the past week, including her frightening encounter the previous evening. The police officer listened intently, taking detailed notes about the truck's appearance and the strange vendor. By that afternoon, a description of the suspicious ice cream truck had been distributed throughout the county, and parents were warned to keep their children indoors, especially during the evening hours. Emma's parents, now taking her concerns seriously, kept a vigilant watch on the street from their windows. 3 days passed with no sign of the mysterious ice cream truck, and the neighborhood remained on edge. Then, on the 4th night, Emma was awakened by the faint sound of "Turkey in the Straw" playing somewhere in the distance. The melody was even more distorted than before, playing at half speed, which transformed the cheerful tune into something truly nightmarish. She crept to her window and peered out into the darkness. There, at the far end of the street, was the ice cream truck, its headlights off, and its white paint seeming to glow faintly under the streetlights. Emma quickly woke her parents, who immediately called the police. As they waited for the authorities to arrive, they watched from the darkened living room as the truck moved slowly down the street, stopping briefly in front of each house. In the days that followed, the community held a meeting at the elementary school gymnasium to discuss the incident. Police officers provided safety tips and reassured concerned parents that they were doing everything possible to locate the person responsible. Emma sat between her parents, listening as the lead detective explained that they believed the suspect had been monitoring the neighborhood for weeks before making his move, using the ice cream truck as a way to gain access to children. Thanks to the detailed description provided by one brave young resident, the detective said, nodding in Emma's direction, we have a composite sketch of the suspect and have shared it with law enforcement agencies across the state. Emma felt a mixture of pride and lingering fear as the adults around her applauded her actions. A week later, the regular Mr. Frosty's ice cream truck returned to the neighborhood, but the carefree innocence that had once accompanied its arrival was gone. Parents stood vigilantly on porches, watching as their children made their purchases. Mr. Frosty himself, a grandfatherly man who had been running his route for over 20 years, was visibly upset about how his beloved profession had been exploited for such sinister purposes. When he reached Emma's house, he insisted on giving her a free ice cream sundae, thanking her for her bravery. As summer began to fade into autumn, the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. The suspect was eventually apprehended, trying to establish a similar operation in another state, bringing a sense of closure to the frightened community. Years later, Emma would still feel a momentary chill whenever she heard the distant melody of an ice cream truck. The experience had taught her to trust her instincts when something didn't feel right, a lesson she carried into adulthood. What should have been a simple childhood pleasure, the excitement of chasing after the ice cream truck on a hot summer, day had been transformed into something far more complex and sinister. But it had also shown her the importance of community vigilance and speaking up when something seems wrong. The true horror wasn't just in what might have happened, but in how easily predators can disguise themselves behind the familiar and innocent, facades that we trust without question. The next time you hear the cheerful jingle of an ice cream truck rolling down your street, take a moment to look closely. Is it the same truck you've always known? Is the music playing just right? Sometimes, the most important details are the ones that seem slightly off-key.